Hello and welcome to Manual Focus podcast with Sonal. Today we are going to talk to Kahllon. Upkar is a freelance photographer, on-location photographer at Photos Unlimited in Kitchener, and interestingly the vice president of the CSI Photography Club of Conestoga College. Upkar, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sonal. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me here.
Well, after listening to your introduction, I'm sure most of the people have guessed the topic that we are going to talk about, which is photography as a profession, especially when you move to a new country. So, Upkar, why don't you start with ISO and shutter speed of your camera when you go for automobile photography? Well,
That's
don't worry, I'm not gonna make you do that right here, but we can surely start with talking about the time when you realize that photography is your passion. And did you have any apprehensions when you realized that you want to take this passion as your profession as well?
that's a good question. So, coming to my journey, I think almost all photographers start the journey as a hobby. Okay, it becomes a hobby, and then you go into the business thing where you can make money because photography is an expensive hobby. So you need to buy stuff, right? So I was in my college during my bachelor's, and that's where I got into the hobby of photography. And moving forward, I started getting works for photography. So I thought, like, why not make it a full time thing? The only thing I feared or worried, I would say, was I'm not good enough. And that is like, I think we all have in different professions. We always have that thing when we question ourselves, whether are we good enough, we can make it or not. So that was the major thing.
Right, I'm sure the clients that you have already worked with can vouch that you are actually good enough about what you're doing.
Yeah, I
Anyways,
hope so.
yeah. Nowadays, if you see any person with a smartphone like me or anyone else would think that, they are a good photographer or a videographer. And to be honest, there are many who are genuinely talented with their skills, even if it's just a smartphone. But then they can't figure out how to convert their skill into, money making a profession or earning money out of it. So, would you like to tell me something about that? If there is some person like this and they want to actually make it a profession, where they should start from?
So that's a challenge. That's actually a challenge, and it depends from person to person. But the major things which somebody needs are there are certain things. So that would be, I would say, professionalism. First of all, you need to inculcate that habit of being professional. So that would be being on time, okay, delivering on time, delivering that good quantity of so that people can rely on your work. Okay, being there's and the other thing which you would need is good communication skills. So communication plays a very important role. That bridges the gap between that photographer and the client, so it becomes that business model. So photography is not a hobby anymore, it's a business for you. So you need to inculcate proper communication with the client, and that is how you will connect with them. And once you connect with them, that is when that networking thing happens. So the first step I would say is make a habit of all these things, inculcate them, and then the next step moving on would be build a portfolio. So anybody who wants to take photography seriously needs to build a portfolio. They need to showcase whatever content they have accumulated. And to do that, maybe you do not have gigs to do it, but what you can do is you have your friends, your family, or maybe in the community you meet, just as you said, hey, I'm a photographer. So would you like to get a picture clicked by me? So initially, maybe not get payments in return, but that would help you make a portfolio for yourself, which you can further showcase to other clients and get business. And the next step is like just talk to people, network with people. Networking is the entire thing to get, setting up a photography business anywhere.
Right.
I hope that answers mostly.
Yeah, I can summarize by like networking, communication, and portfolio. A strong portfolio. Those are three things that you would suggest to
Yeah.
have before you start doing it. And before I move on to my next question, Upkar, I want to know that since when do you do photography, and probably how many clients have you worked so far, if you remember the number.
That's no, I do not remember how many clients I worked with, but I can proudly say I've worked with a lot.
Mhm.
And it's been around 6 years now since I've been doing photography, and I've moved on into cinematography as well.
So as you said, you're doing it for 6 years, 2 years into cinematography, and lot of clients. The reason behind asking this is, as you already know, that you're working with different kind of people, so their expectations are different. You've been
Yeah.
working with Canadian communities for a now while since you are in Canada. Uh, could you tell us what appeals them more than they, or what they look at your in your portfolio? In other words, what usually they demand compared to Indian clients?
That's actually a good thing you asked about this. Canadian culture is completely different from Indian culture. Indians have different expectations in terms of photography. They are more into that staged environment where everything has to be picture perfect, as you say, right?
Hmm.
But Canadians, they do not go for that mostly. It's more natural to them. They like people to be honest. Okay. So, as a photographer, you do not have to sugarcoat stuff for them. You just have to be plain, simply honest.
Wow, that sounds actually interesting to me, because you know how in India we like more gaudy or edited photographs, and it would be a completely opposite to natural emotions in a photograph, and
Yes.
which they value here. So that's the important thing that the photographers or videographers should keep in mind here. Do you have any funny weird experience with any of your client when it comes to expectations, because you have at least 6 years of experience working as professional photographer? So
There are a lot of things which photographers have to go through on a day-to-day basis. Back in India also there was that, as you know, as I was telling you, that Indians have different expectations. So generally, when I did a photo shoot for some family or anyone in India, that they used to tell me just one thing: make me look thin. I should not look fat in my pictures. Okay, so that is their expectations back in India, what they had. In Canada, I haven't seen much of requests like this because they kind of respect photography a lot. So, but I've had incidents where I was photographing a family here and I was doing the shoot, and midway of the shoot, when all the family was staged and everything, they brought out their cell phone and gave it to me and was like, "Can you click a picture in this, please?" And I'm like, "Okay, I get it." So that is one thing. They always want a picture on the smartphone. It seems funny, and it seems like, you might get angry. Some people do get offended by it, but then I have understood that if you go deep down into what they exactly want, why they do this, is because, as I said, you have to be professional with your work. So deliver on time. People click pictures to showcase to everybody what they want. So that delivery on time is most of the time that does not happen. And that is the reason people want them, to click pictures on the smartphone as well, so that they have it instantly.
right.
So that is one thing which photographers need to keep in mind.
Yeah, thank you so much, Upkar, for joining us, sharing your experience, and giving this important tips for the newcomer photographers who are moving to this new country. So thank you so much and I wish you good luck.
Thank you so much, Sonal, for having me. Been a pleasure with you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Have a good night.